Namaste and welcome to Live, Love, Engage. I am Gloria Grace Rand, and today we're going to be talking about communication and communication with heart, and probably a bunch of other things that I don't even know yet what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about it with this lovely lady, Janice Burt. First off, who is a really multi-talented woman, and I will tell you about her in a moment. But first off, welcome to Live, Love, Engage, Janice.
Namaste. Also, I love how you opened up your show with that. That's amazing. And thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, I am delighted. We met recently at, it was a mastermind event, I believe it was. And yeah, there were a lot of interesting people at that event. And it's wonderful to be able to connect with someone that, from different parts of the country and to be able to find out fascinating things. And so let me tell you a little bit about the multi-talented Janice. She is a Spanish interpreter, a voiceover artist, yoga instructor, author, and inspirational speaker. And after a painful divorce 9 years ago, she decided to focus on self-development and personal growth. And she loves walking through her fears to become the best version of herself possible. And she's a lover of peace and a proponent of love, which is definitely one of the reasons why we connected, because that's what I'm all about with my Live, Love, Engage podcast that you're listening to and or watching on YouTube. So I thought we would start with the fact that when I was looking at your website, I noticed that it says communication with heart. So I was curious to know, I guess, what that means to you, really, and why is it important to you?
Yeah, I think communication with heart to me just means putting my authentic self out there and coming from a very heart-centered space. That's typically my MO, I guess, is kind of like to wear my heart on my sleeve, and I feel all my feels, and I'm very much in that kind of heart space. So I would say that was kind of my thought with the communication with heart, was just the open-hearted, honest, authentic me.
I like that. And for those of you who are listening, you wouldn't be, obviously can't see this, but I noticed that in your office, you have this big red heart up on a shelf behind you there. You walk the walk, I guess, and talk the talk, and have your heart up on not only your sleeve, but on your bookcase there, or or cabinet. So that's kind of cool. You are involved in a lot of different things. Again, I was looking at your website, and I love actually how you have it set up, because up at the top, normally you would see on a typical website, it has, about and services and, different pages. But I love how you had, like, each page was sort of Spanish Janice and voiceover Janice and yoga Janice. So this is sort of I'm going to come at you from this standpoint of what the gurus would say is like, oh my gosh, why are you in all those different things? And isn't that confusing to your, the clients that you're working with? And, you need to be like one thing to one person and not have all of these things. It's too confusing. So what would you say to somebody like that? Because you're not afraid to say, no, I do all of these different things.
And trust me, I have heard exactly that. And there is wisdom to that for sure. For me, I come from a place of not really knowing myself very well, having lost my voice in the world. So after my divorce and that rock bottom moment, I had this realization, which was I was really good at placing blame. I was really good at the victim mentality and, oh, poor me and what everybody has done to me.
Yeah.
And I just decided, I'm done living from that place. I want to create my life. I need to take personal responsibility from here on out. Like the past may be the past, and that's fine. It is what it is. But here I have a choice and a moment to decide basically who I want to be, how I want to live the rest of my life. So I just started, like, for instance, before my divorce, I hadn't done any of those things that are up on my website. Wow. I hadn't done voiceovers. I wasn't a Spanish interpreter. I didn't do yoga, none of it. So over the last 8 years, I have just dedicated myself to, first of all, really figuring out who I am, what I stand for, what my voice wants to be in this world. And I've just developed myself little by little, baby step by baby step. It didn't happen overnight, but, now 8 years later, 9 years later, I can wake up and look at my website and go, wow, those are the things that I've accomplished in 8 years just from taking the power back and taking my life back. So for me, it wasn't so much, it has to be perfect for marketing and for getting clients. It was more like, hey, this is me, and I just want to put it out there and continue to develop those skills, and then just see what life brings and offers me as I'm walking out these steps.
I love that. I mean, literally, it's like my heart was just like swelling with pride, love, admiration for you to be not even courageous, but just owning the fact that this is who you are. This is the value you bring. And that, yeah, and I guess it's being courageous, not being afraid to say, hey, I do this, I do that, I do this other thing, and I enjoy it. I assume you enjoy it, because otherwise you probably wouldn't have it on your website, right? And I think that is an important lesson for all of us. And I can also totally relate to it, because I have been going through a similar journey in the last few years myself, and trying to figure out what it is that I really want to do. And I know that even as this year I was working with a branding coach and to position my SEO copywriting business more effectively, at the same time, I'm really loving doing the podcast. I'm really loving speaking, and I'm writing a book. And now yesterday I just came up with another idea for another book. And I'm thinking, this website may evolve. And I had updated my LinkedIn profile picture, and I'm realizing that it's not really in congruence with what it says down below, because at the top it's like podcast host, author, speaker. So clearly that's where my brain is, and that's where my heart is, I think, actually more. So yeah, it's interesting how these things happen, isn't it? So of the different things that you do you have a favorite wheelhouse that you like to play in? Or does it just maybe even depend on the day?
Yeah, so personal development and personal growth, that's kind of on the top of my list of just things that light me up, that excite me. And it really is the internal work that I do. And, some days it's really uncomfortable. Some days it's really unpleasant and painful. And I kind of don't like it during those days, but I know the benefits. I guess I've experienced the benefits enough to go, wait a minute, that's like the pain or the difficulty that you go through when you're growing yourself and when there's something super positive on the other side. So it's worth it. So I would say when I do more inspirational speaking, I get so lit up, and it really feels like that's my passion, my purpose in life. And I think partially it's because I'm just speaking to myself,
Mm.
the things that I need to be reminded of.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to do that externally and hopefully put out positive information or encouragement to other people at the same time, I'm receiving that on my end. So I love that.
Mm.
Now, recently I have an opportunity, and this is in the early stages still of developing it, but to work with a company where I would, and this is kind of putting all my things together,
Yeah.
which feels really good, which is it's like a meditation type of app,
Mm.
or deep relaxation guided meditation type of thing, but I would translate and record it in Spanish.
Oh,
So it uses, I mean, it's
nice.
like all the things
Exactly.
put together. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so in alignment with everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that so far is the thing that I'm most excited about. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I love the variety. So if every day I was, let's say just interpreting or just even acting, which I really enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
but I've realized with acting, a lot of it is, sit there and wait
Yeah.
for, for a long time before
Right.
you have the opportunity. So I think I would kind of get tired of that if I was doing that every day. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really nice to be able to mix it up.
Yeah, I love that, and I love how it's aligned for you to be able to do this interpretation, the Spanish interpreting of meditation, and I think that's again a good lesson for anyone listening out there, that is why it's important to really find what you love and do it, because when you are out there putting your heart and soul in things, that's when opportunities show up. People see you. I mean, yesterday I did a Facebook Live. Just I hadn't done one in a long time, but I was inspired after I had done some writing in the morning, some journaling, and sort of tied in with after the election. As we're recording this, it's a couple days past the U.S. presidential election, and somebody saw me and said, "Oh, I'd love to maybe have you on my Facebook Live that I'm doing. I do these transformational Thursdays, and so would you like to come on and let's talk some more about this stuff?" Because I put myself out there doing what I loved to do, what I felt called to do, opportunities showed up. So take advantage of that. You're
Yes.
listening. That's so let's see. Oh, well, actually, that brings me to another question for you is, especially dealing with, providing inspiration, hopefully, to people. What has been, or even what would you offer people, even now that the election is over? There's still people are going to be unhappy. There's going to be some people are happy, some people aren't happy, just like it's been through this whole period that we've gone through. What words of advice would you have for someone out there to be able to, I guess, manage whatever feelings are coming up for them right now?
Oh, man. That is a good question with everything that is going on. I would say right now, though, empathy is huge, and really, it's so easy to put up our walls and this is my stance and this is what I believe. And if you believe any differently, then don't talk to me, or, and it's very divisive.
Yeah.
And I would just say, when we can have empathy for somebody else and their position and their views, even, and their struggles and how they show up in the world, then I feel like that does a lot for our own hearts when we're relating to people. At least I know it does for me. And I can actually feel the difference. Like, if I put up those kind of barricades around my heart and my, this is what it is, and I'm very adamant and I don't want to listen to you. Like, I think that's a huge problem right now, is not being able to just listen to somebody that has a different opinion
Mm-hmm.
or even a different life experience, and just knowing, man, I didn't live that life. I don't know what that was like. So tell me about that. How do you feel? How, what's going on? And genuinely just be open to listening to somebody else. I think something shifts within us. And it doesn't mean we're going to necessarily agree on all the issues or anything like that, but it's this, it's just bringing humanity together in a way that is, more loving, more empathetic, more compassionate, as opposed to you're over there and I'm over here and we're just divided and we're not going to listen to each other.
Yeah.
So that's something that we could do just for our own hearts, to be in a better place, in a better mindset. I would also say movement is so good for us. And a lot of times it's kind of the last thing that we want to do is like, I don't want to do any physical movement, but in moving physically, we actually can release a lot of this stress, a lot of the tension that we're feeling. So it's movement coupled with, I would say, sitting in stillness or doing some meditation, and changing our state of being. There's something about that is liberating and yeah, just helps us release stress and tension and anxiety, which a lot of us are dealing with right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that it was interesting. I was having a discussion with my coach today and I was telling her I was feeling a bit anxious because I had a lot of things to do today. But she helped me to actually really just come up with a plan of action to figure out what did I want to do first. And it was, as I was, prioritizing, that helped take some of that anxiety off of my shoulders and I could relax a bit. But I do think it's important, just as you said, to be able to do some movement and to find ways to be able to shift how you're feeling and to listen to people. That is so important. We just don't do enough of that. It's so hard because I sometimes, and I know I was guilty of this in the beginning when I first started my podcast, is at the same time I'm listening, but I'm also trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to ask next? And then when you do that, part of your brain just really does shut off. And then I'm not really totally present to the guest at what they're saying. So there is an art to that, learning how to do that. And I'm practicing every day. So I'm not perfect yet, but I'm definitely working on it.
No, that's awesome. And it's having the awareness of that is huge. They say nothing changes without awareness. So even just knowing, then we can start going. Because it's the same thing. When I interview people also, I find myself doing the same thing. You're kind of thinking, okay, what's the next question? Which we do actually in normal conversation
Exactly.
a lot also. And there's something so amazing about clearing out our mind and our thoughts and just being totally 100% focused on what that other person is saying. It's amazing. And it is something that takes practice for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll just let folks know who are listening to this, if you sometimes hear me pause when after someone is talking, it's because I am now trying to figure out what do I want to ask now, because I've been attempting to be really present and listening to your answer, and then now saying, okay, what direction should we go to next? So I'm going to pass the ball to you, and say, what direction do you want to go to next? So if someone were, actually, I'm going to phrase it a different way. Let's say, because you are normally interviewing other people, have there been any times when you asked a question and maybe it was something that you wish somebody had actually asked you because maybe you've never even had a chance to answer it? So is there anything that anyone has hasn't asked you that you've been burning to tell people about?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if there's something they haven't asked me, because usually we go pretty in depth in the interviews and things, but I would just say I love talking about courage and walking through fears, because I lived in such a place of complete fear. And it was this unconscious fear, in a sense, that I didn't even really know that I was living with so much fear. And it was actually not until it was a hypnotherapy session where it was more that guided relaxation and going deep within, that when I went within myself, I actually saw and felt all of the fear. And it was like the craziest experience. But in that moment, I had the realization. And then from that moment on, my goal was to release the fear. And because I know that we're either living from a place of love or from a place of fear. And I'm sure you've heard this before, they can't coexist. You can't have love there and fear there at the same time. So to me, when I heard that, and then I saw all the fear inside of me, I'm like, well, geez, that means that, there's no love in there. That's horrible. And so in these past 8 or 9 years, my goal and what I've been working on is really to every day make a choice to choose love, and so that fear cannot exist within me. But at the beginning, I had to really take a strong stand against fear, because it had controlled my life for so long. I was like, okay, I'm going to do all the things that I'm scared of. And this is what I recommend to people to do also, is create a list of fears. And you can start with general ones or start more with specific ones. But usually all of our fears, once we boil them down, are pretty similar. It's the fear of, not being good enough, the fear of being judged, the fear of failure, the fear of loss. I mean, we have all these kind of common fears. And then I just thought, okay, I know public speaking, for instance, and I knew I loved inspiring people and speaking this way, yet the fear held me back from doing it. So then I thought, okay, here's the end goal, is I want to be able to speak in public, be able to inspire people this way. So how do I start? When the fear feels so overwhelming, how do I start? And it was just baby steps. So I felt like, okay, I know I want to do that. Let me research a little bit about public speaking. So then, the more knowledge we have, that takes a little bit of the fear away. So I started, watching TED Talks, and, those types of things. Oh, okay, I see how these people are doing it. I see what they're talking about. Then I joined Toastmasters, which is a public speaking organization. You've probably heard of it. And started, just giving speeches with my note cards, and started really just baby steps. And then started competing in speech competitions and started doing more things on stages. And I will say, when you're walking through fears, it's not going to be perfect every time. The first speech in Toastmasters that I gave, I started shaking uncontrollably.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, to the point where I was going to fall over. I had to hold on to the podium. It was like this violent shaking. But that was such an amazing moment, because I decided to stand there and shake instead of going and sitting down in my safe place. And that's when I knew, okay, this is the crossroads. This is right here where fear either is controlling me or I'm controlling it. So, in our vulnerability, in our being able to be not perfect, we are liberated. And not only that, other people are liberated to just say, we don't have to be perfect. There's what is perfection and how boring is that anyway? And
Absolutely.
let's flaws and all, but let's live life. So that's what I would say to you, to people, to whoever's watching, to myself, because it's a daily thing.
Mhm.
I want to live life to the fullest, to the best version of me possible, and that just doesn't include fear,
Mm.
or fear holding me back, because
Yeah.
obviously fear in some instances is good. It's put there for a reason, to protect us.
Yeah.
But when we let it go too far, it can literally control our existence.
Yeah. And I had a counselor one time who said sometimes it's not necessarily fear. We may think it's fear, but it could actually just simply be excitement. Or we can even just think of it that way. So like normally, you could be nervous and scared before you are going to be speaking in public somewhere. And frankly, as you know, with acting, I mean, I think even professionals who are paid millions of dollars, they still get sometimes nervous. And singers, I think even like Barbara Streisand, I think has famously said that she would have stage fright a bit before she would go on to sing, and then she'd sing beautifully. So it's, if we can just say, okay, it's let's treat it as if, a bit of nervous energy, because it also, I think part of sometimes why we have that fear is because we really do want to do a good job. It's not that, I think deep down in our hearts, now maybe our head is saying, oh yeah, be careful, you're going to fail, and blah blah blah. But I think our heart, the reason we get excited is because we want to do our best for the audience, the conference. If you're speaking at a business event or something like that, you want to do a good job. And so, but if we can maybe categorize it as excitement as opposed to letting it be fear that's going to hold us back, um, it might be
I
a way
love
to
that.
to reframe it a little bit in our head and just say, it's okay. We're just excited. Yeah, this is good.
Totally. Yeah. It's perspective, right? Perspective is everything, and it can shift, or what story we're telling ourselves, the narrative
Yeah,
can shift us. So
yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah. Is there what would you how do you um I guess maybe how else would you approach this subject really with someone who is, or, well, even in your case where you said you didn't even realize that you had fears. So, um, how would you, what kind of advice, I guess, would be what I'm trying to say is that you'd offer someone if maybe they don't quite know why they're not getting the results they want, and maybe it is because they've got some unconscious fears. Is there anything that you um, recommend that they could do that might help them out in being able to figure it out, maybe?
I mean, I have done a lot of different types of therapy,
Hmm.
and to me, they were all good in certain ways, in certain areas. And I think there's something to be said for going and talking to a professional or somebody that has more training,
Hmm.
because they can definitely see things that we're blind to, that we just don't have the eyes to see in that moment.
Right.
But going into that very open minded
Mm.
and willing and wanting to change and transform, and going, okay, I am, even though it might be painful and even though it might hurt, I know it's worth it to really take a deep look inside of myself.
Mm.
And I think that's what a lot of times we run from, and why it's so easy to blame others, or why it's so easy to numb ourselves by using a whole variety of tools,
Right.
numbing tools,
Yes. Yep.
instead of sitting with our own pain to really figure out, okay, what first of all, what is that coming from? Because I think there's something very healing about knowing where certain things come from. So for instance, I struggle a lot with insecurity and jealousy. So I could look at that as a, 43-year-old woman or whatever and beat myself up like, really, you're in your 40s and you're still feeling bad about your appearance, or you're comparing yourself, or you're doing things like that. And instead of beating myself up, though, if I just look at it and go, okay, well, it's a fact that you feel this way. So where did that come from? And I can look back to my teenage years, remember when I was a tomboy and I purposefully clothed myself in a certain way and wore no makeup, and I didn't want any type of male attention. And then I would look at my female friends getting all this attention because they would put on makeup and look so beautiful. So I go, oh, well, that makes sense. And then I can have compassion on that little girl who just felt, not pretty enough, not good enough in comparison. But then I can also say, okay, but it's okay because now you have the tools. Now you love yourself, and so I can kind of talk to that little girl in me that is still wounded from this past experience. And that is a beautifully healing, transformative thing that happens from the inside out, in a very real way, I guess, instead of just the Band-Aids.
Yeah.
That, like that we can put on. It's like, well, what's the root? I want to go to the root. Like what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. And then what I've learned is even when you can do that, when you can kind of figure it out, not only can you have compassion, I've learned through working with my coaches that you can actually now just totally create a new story. You don't even have to have that same memory anymore. You could just say, I was fine when that happened because I just enjoyed. I never felt in competition with those girls or whatever. You can make up the story at all, or just maybe even decide that, well, they were all made up, but none of the boys liked them anyway because they were too made up. Whatever. It doesn't really matter because it's in the past, and nobody's going to come back and criticize you for changing a memory, unless you go ahead and tell them you're doing that. But if it's just between you and yourself, you can create whatever memory you want. Brain doesn't know any different.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that is I remember in one of my EMDR sessions, there was a moment where she said, it was kind of a traumatic moment for me in my teenage years. And she said, okay, so if you were to create something different in that moment, what would it be? And so then my story then became an empowering story instead of a story that took my power away.
Exactly.
So yes, that's a great thing to do. But I think it's super important not to avoid or repress, because I was really good at repressing, and those things don't just go away. They actually get more deeply rooted within us and in our body, which is why now, neck and back problems that I'm working on because of all the years of carrying stress and tension and anxiety there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, because that's where you can do things like, writing letters to, maybe people who had hurt you or something. And so that you can be able to get all of that anger out or fear on the page, and then you can release that. But you're right, you do still have to acknowledge these things because they're part of your past. But when you can look at them in the light of day of being an adult now, as opposed to a child, where you've got, hopefully you're a little older and you're older and wiser, and you can have compassion, as you were saying, have compassion because, when you were a child, you're doing the best you can and dealing with things that you didn't necessarily understand, and you didn't maybe know how to process the emotions. And now, especially if you have started to work with someone, and I think that is important, is to seek help. Don't try to necessarily fix these things on your own, because while it may also take you a lot longer, and you'd have to go through a lot more pain than if you just found someone, whether it is some kind of healing professional, a coach, a therapist, counselor. There's all kinds of folks out there who can help you, and you don't have to suffer alone.
Totally. And I would say another crucial thing is being curious in life and really just going out. I mean, if you think about this life as, okay, we have this certain amount of time to be able to do all the things or experience or experiment or figure out. And so many times fear does hold us back from even, being curious. And that's part of the reason I do so many things, was just a little bit of that curiosity. Oh, wow, I wonder if I did this, or let me try this. Let me sign up for this writing group. Let me, go join a running group and see what that feels like. And just involving yourself in life and in this, like it's experimental, and if you do something and you absolutely hate it, then you just don't do that anymore. But at least you kind of know, okay, that's not for me, and let me try something else.
Absolutely. I think it's giving ourselves permission to really be a kid again, in a sense, because when we were kids, we would do that. We would try all sorts of things. And, we'd have our parents ask our parents to, I want to sign up for baseball. I want to take acting lessons like my daughter did, and then decided she didn't want to do that after a while. But she didn't know what she was going to like and what she wasn't going to like unless she tried it. So yeah, I think just experiment and have fun, because this, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, or it doesn't matter, you're living right now in this body. You've got this chance to do whatever you want to do. So take a chance and do something, and um, don't let fear stop you. Definitely don't let fear stop you. And if you find that fear is stopping you, then definitely go get some help, because life is too short. Life is too short not to have fun. It really is. And I know I've spent too many years not having as much fun as I would like to. And I'm remedying that now, because it's, and like tomorrow I'm going to go to the beach in the morning, because I I like to do that, and I'll do some work while I'm there, but I want to be able to just get away, and the beach recharges me, and I think that's important too, is to find things that fill you up, that really light you up inside, so that you can then go out and deal with things that maybe are not as fun. But when you're coming at it from a place of um, feeling good about yourself, and you can handle when challenges come up.
Yes, and I love that you're going to the beach tomorrow, Gloria. Good job. No, it's so amazing. It really is this the one and only tattoo I have says balance. And it is and not, when I say balance, I don't mean it has to be perfect, like exactly perfect, but there is a flow and a balance to life. Like when we're able to be productive, and the time that we're working, we really give it our all. But then when we are resting and recovering, and that we're giving that our all, and we're being very purposeful and intentional about it. So I think that's amazing to actually put that in your calendar and go and do things that recharge you. Actually, I think it's crucial, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, I think we've seen that probably even more so this year, because we've been dealing with the pandemic, and it's been so stressful for so many people. And even, I mean, even myself, who haven't had it as hard, certainly, as a lot of folks, and thankfully our family has been healthy, but I realized that there's still been this undercurrent of stress that has been in my life. And part of it is my husband's working from home now, which he didn't used to do, so I've had to deal with that. And but just because there's also so much, a lot of people are dealing with it. And then we had the stress of the election and all of these things. And so even, um, I have a whole bunch of tools available to me. I really had to use them. Frankly, I had to make sure that I was carving out time to do my meditation, go out for a walk or ride my bike or do something to be able to manage that. Have you found anything like, something that you've had to maybe even do differently even this year just to help yourself out?
Oh yeah. Well, all of those things, the movement, like we were talking about before, the meditation and just sitting with myself, gratitude is a huge deal.
Oh,
As you know, it's
yeah.
like, there's something about, just as love and fear cannot coexist, I feel like when we're grateful, that complaining negative narrative
Mm,
just shuts off, which I tend to deal with a lot, is more like the negative. I can go in these downward spirals of
yeah.
thought.
Mm-hmm.
So gratitude instantly just shifts my focus.
Yep.
I love yoga because I believe it incorporates the mind, body, spirit connection
Mm-hmm.
that we all have pretty beautifully. So to me, if I want the physical benefits, the mental benefits, and the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual benefits kind of all in one,
Right.
I'll do a little bit of yoga. And it's amazing
Mm,
what a half hour of yoga, mindfulness,
mm-hmm.
going back to our breath, just being very conscious about the inhales and the exhales, about allowing the air to actually go all the way into our bellies and
Mm,
expand through, because we, especially with anxiety and things like that, we will shallow breathe.
that's true.
And I mean, even today, I was sitting in my car driving and I noticed, I'm like, there is not good oxygen circulation right now. I'm almost holding my breath, and it was
Oh
just
my.
very much without even thinking about it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was my standard
Mm,
thing, and
yeah,
it's sitting there in the car. So then instantly I just took a deep inhale in through my nose,
yeah.
allowed the air to go all the way down in my stomach, allow the air to kind of like make your stomach get big,
Mm-hmm.
and then exhale all the air out. And in one breath, it just, it calmed me.
Yeah.
It reset something. I'm like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, we have this powerful tool within us.
Yeah. And it's so simple. And we take it for
Mhm.
granted, because our body is this wonderful machine that does all this stuff without us thinking about it. But when we can be thoughtful and you're absolutely right. Just taking, you know, 2 deep breaths, even just one, frankly. But if you can do like 2 or 3, it does wonders. It really does. And that's a easy thing to do. And you can do it standing in line at the grocery store. Nobody even has to know you're doing it. It's not like you have to sit in a lotus position to meditate. You can just
Totally. No, and you know what, on this topic, really quickly, I think it's kind of an overlooked topic,
Mhm.
the taking care of ourselves
Mm,
topic,
mhm.
because I love the analogy of the airplane with the
Oh,
putting on your
yeah, the
oxygen mask
mask.
first. To
Mhm.
me, there is no better illustration I mean, here they're saying you have a child next to you, your own child,
Yeah,
and they're saying you need to put on your mask first before helping him, because you know why? If you're not good yourself, you cannot help anybody. Not one
exactly.
person, not
Right. Not
a
even your
thousand
child.
people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, self-love is neat. I feel like needs to be talked about more, like the
Mhm.
care of ourselves.
Mhm.
Because even if we're givers and nurturers, if it comes from a place of lack, or it comes from a place of we're looking for validation, which that's why I know, because I was very good at doing that.
Mhm.
I'm going to serve and give to everybody,
Yeah.
but I am empty inside.
Yeah.
And I hate myself inside, but
Hmm.
I'm going to give to you and I'm going to help you and I'm going to, but then you know what? It's like, it's giving from a source of nothing.
Yeah.
And then you're depleted and either having anxiety attacks or panic attacks or depression or, and then you can help nobody.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you can wind up feeling resentful and just, you're being taken advantage of and things like that. And yeah, because I've been there too. And it is so important. Yeah. And definitely speaking as a caregiver, I helped my sister when she was going through cancer. And yeah, I made sure, and that was again that I would every morning I meditated because I wanted to be sure that I could be present for her and to be the strength that she needed at the time. And if I wasn't taking care of myself, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't have been able to take care of her and she needed it. So, but it doesn't even have to be a sick family member. It could be just as simple as, either taking care of your kids, taking care of your business. If you are not taking care of yourself, then, and especially if you're like a one person business, then what do you do when you have a sick day? Then your clients aren't going to be taken care of because suddenly you're sick. So you've got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, which could mean hiring people or putting in systems so that things happen automatically so that you can afford to take some time off when something does happen.
Yes,
Um,
no, totally. I think it affects all areas of life.
yeah.
So professionally, your relationships, your business, it really comes down to, who are we? How do we feel about ourselves?
Mm,
How much do we love ourselves? How are we showing up into the world? Yeah, I think everything has to do with that.
yeah.
So to really focus on it, to me, in these last 8 years, has become kind of a no brainer. Because I'm like, hey, if this is the source of everything,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm putting it on the back burner,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. So, and I think that's, again, to go back to your question about all my little things that I do,
Right.
it's, yeah, those things fill me. Those things
Mm,
bring my voice out,
mm,
my heart out.
yeah.
They, there, it's an expression, like this creative expression. And I think we
Mhm.
are all creators.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And so to be able to create something just for the sake of it existing and of you creating it is enough.
Mm-hmm.
It really is enough. And then, from there, I mean, yes, we can do the cool branding things and the this and the that, which do work and are great. But I think so many times we skip this initial step that is so important, and we go to the the stuff that is not as crucial or important, and then wonder why everything kind of fell apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because you can be not as successful because you've spent too much on the, I guess, window dressing as opposed to figuring out what actually goes in the window and taking care of that first instead of, dealing with all the trimmings. It's not a
Well,
best analogy,
no,
but you know what I mean, I think.
no, totally. And actually, an analogy that I love is a physical wound. Like when we get cut, yes, it hurts, right? And if we're going to put alcohol and clean out the cut, it's going to hurt even worse at the
Right.
beginning.
Yeah.
But then that allows that wound to heal properly. Whereas if we get cut and then we're like, it hurts, so don't touch it. I'm not going to clean it out. I'm not going to, really make sure this doesn't get infected. Just
Right.
don't
Yeah.
touch it.
Yeah.
It's an infection, and then it's the loss of an arm, or
Yeah.
it spirals out of control. So we have to do the clearing out. We have to go deep into the
Mm,
root of our problems to
mm,
really effectively heal and then be who we are truly meant to be.
absolutely. Oh, I love that. Well, I've been enjoying this conversation immensely, and hopefully the rest of everyone else listening and watching has too. And perhaps if they want to be able to get in touch with you and maybe learn more about different things you do, maybe someone out there needs some Spanish interpretation, perhaps, or wants to learn yoga. What is the best way that someone can contact you?
Yes, so I am Spanish Janice on most social media platforms, but I have a website called SpanishJanice.com, and that's the one you were referencing earlier. So it kind of will give you samples of different things that I've done, and my contact information is in there. So yeah, I'd love to be of service to anyone out there who needs anything. I mean, really it is, putting myself out there and seeing what opportunities come along and present themselves.
Absolutely. And you said now you do interviews too. So where do you do your interviews? How can someone catch you and be able to listen to you?
Yes. Oh, thank you for saying that, because this is kind of a new thing that I just discovered that I love doing. So, and I'm going to interview you. So you're going to be on there, which I'm super excited about. It is on my YouTube channel, which is called Spanish Janice Speaks. And there's a playlist on there called Interviews with the Rich and Famous in Heart and Soul.
Ooh, I like that.
And they're short, 25 to 30-minute interviews, but they're just full of inspiration and tips and tricks and tools and things that people use to really create their best lives, to be the best them possible. And there's just some amazing individuals from all walks of life doing amazing things, authors, writers, speakers. I have an opera singer on there, marriage and family therapists, and I just love the variety of inspiration and voices that are on there. So I put one on there every week for just a little dose of inspiration and encouragement.
I love it. Well, we're so in alignment. I'm so glad we met, because, that's what I do here as well. And I love doing it. I love talking to people like yourself. It's all right. I love, well, I was getting too much on the face. It was on your hair and it was looking very lovely. But for those of you listening, that Janice has a little bit of a sort of these vertical little dots of light that are coming through her window, and they've been on her shirt for most of the interview, but it was starting to creep a little bit too close to her face.
I should have moved a while ago, but I will say this is the last bit of sun we're probably going to have here in California, because tomorrow it drops 20 degrees.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, bundle up, I guess, perhaps, but stay warm. And I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk and to share your brilliance, because you definitely shared some lots of good tips and strategies yourself today. So we appreciate it. And
thank you, Gloria, for having me and for being such a light in the world. And I think just in you continuing on your path is just such an example for other people. And so, yeah, keep podcasting, writing that book. I can tell that's where you're speaking. That's where your heart is. And so, yeah, definitely stay on that path. And you can do other things too, but that's a good.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I hear you. Absolutely. All right. Well, until next time, I thank you again for listening, for watching. Got my little puppy dog down here. And as always, I just encourage you to go out in the world and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.